Away we go.
Hello. This presentation and the aim of the seminar, along with the paper, was to determine appropriate ethical research methods to use within a specified event. This event was an art exhibition, and the research was about people's interaction with and the communication of a specified piece of work within that art exhibition. The discussion will determine these ethical research methods through looking at what I did in this particular order, if it will come up. There we go. It'll begin with a brief description of both research methods, and then which is observation and then a focus group, and then an investigation into those research methods, followed by one after the other, investigating what was successful and unsuccessful, and then from that I will show you a proposed research method and then conclude the whole thing together. Okay, so beginning with a brief description, we're going to start with observation, and in this stage, I, being the creator of the art piece, I watched visitors' interaction and I took notes on what they did or what they said. And I had two choices with that stage. I could have either done it through personal observation and then taking notes, or I could have recorded people, and to make it ethical I would have had a sign up saying that their interactions would be recorded for research purposes. But I chose the personal observation because through my own experience, when a camera comes into play and when people are in front of a camera that's recording their actions, their behaviour changes, and then that could have made the research gathered less untruthful. Then we had the focus group, which was a discussion held amongst peers who were also present at the exhibition and who also created the other pieces there. Now this was quite heavily guided by my own questions, and it was also held about a week after the exhibition. And I did the same as the observation. I just recorded what people said in rough notes. Now, the investigation is going to begin with the observation stage. Now, this stage was largely subjective. It was heavily influenced by individual reception, perception, and then interpretation. And the main problem I found is that with the notes that I made, an individual reading those notes could then interpret the behaviour described differently to how the behaviour was actually done at the time. So I can show you here. There's my notes are just very quite vague, really, describing if they liked it, and then if they participated, and then how well their participation went, which is also very vague and very inaccurate, and it's not very widespread considering the number of visitors we had was greater than about 6, which is how much I recorded there. And then with the focus group, I found that it was guided too much by the questions that I asked. There was no discussion generated from those questions. It was just sort of I asked the question, and some of them were also yes or no answers, so there wasn't much else, much more information gathered from that. I was also the moderator and asking the questions within that discussion, and that being the creator of the piece, it's quite possible that people gave answers that wouldn't offend me or upset me if they were bad. So they just gave answers that was positive, and so I didn't have any improvements to make when I knew that wasn't quite true. It's also possible that groupthink was adopted by the members of the group, and this is an action in which the members act or speak as a collective for fear of disagreement with one another. Yeah. Okay, and from this I had my proposed research method involved, in the observation stage, I decided to have, rather than myself observing and taking notes, I would have a camera recording. But in order to deal with the behavioural changes, I would have a sign next to it that said participants' interaction might be recorded, because then that would make them unsure if they were being recorded or not, and then hopefully it would reduce their behaviour changes so that research would be more accurate. And then having this objective approach would also be accompanied with a subjective approach in which visitors would fill out an anonymous form asking questions about the communication of the piece and the interaction of the piece. That's an example of what the camera recording could look like there, and as you can see they can't interact with it quite well, it goes a bit wrong. This is an example of the research paper form that the visitors would fill out. It's got questions such as age, which is another point that camera observation can't pick up. You don't know the exact age of the people interacting. You know there's a rough age, but that's about it. And then it's got keywords that they circle. Some relate to the product and some don't. That's in order to assess if the communication of the piece was successful. And the option for other comments if they have anything more detailed to say. And then another section repeated, is done the same, but just with the interactivity of the piece. Both sets of research at this stage would then be shown to members of the focus group a day before the discussion would take place. And doing it at this time allows for reflection on the research to take place, but it's done soon enough so that the memory doesn't interfere and change some of the things that they've seen. And then these bits of research will also be available throughout the focus group, which is the next stage, so that when people make points they can then refer to the video or forms to then justify what they're saying. And rather than the moderator just taking notes on what everyone said, each member of the focus group would then fill out a form throughout the discussion, similar to the one that you've seen, but with less keywords and more questions with answers to get a more accurate response. The moderator will also not be the creator of the piece in order to avoid people not wanting to cause offence and giving untruthful answers in that sense. And rather than asking questions, they'll only guide the discussion by interfering if it digresses to another topic than the one intended. And they'll record, rather than making notes, they'll record it by filling out a form that's similar to minutes in business meetings and that sort of thing. Once this is done, once the focus group discussion has taken place, and everyone's got everything recorded, it'll all be collected and cross-referenced by the moderator and another individual, and then that will then form the final research gathered. Yeah. So, to conclude, I don't have any visual aids for this part, unfortunately, but to conclude, an ethical way to get objective research would be to record visitors' participation with a sign saying that they might be recorded, but using the word, specifically the word might, so that the participants wouldn't know if they were being recorded or not, so hopefully keep their behaviour truthful. And this would also be accompanied by a more subjective form of research where they're involving the participants filling out a form. And then this would all be given to the members of the focus group for them to reference. And the forms would also be anonymous. They wouldn't know who they were or who they were in the videos where they were participating, in order to keep it ethical. And once the discussion takes place, that will also be recorded via forms rather than just note-taking, because these can be interpreted in different ways. And it'll all be collected up, cross-referenced, and then that will form the research. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll open it to debate. I have a few questions, but
Yeah.
Russell.
So you said you've got a sign saying they might be recorded.
Yeah.
Is that to keep it ethical?
Yeah, it's so that they know that their actions will possibly be recorded, so that they know there's a camera, or they know that that's going to happen, but they don't know if they're being recorded at that time or not.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what Venetia's saying is that if you make people aware by saying some of your actions may be recorded for educational purposes.
Yeah. So
Okay? It's a bit like, you know, when you pick up a phone and you get a sales call.
yeah.
This call may be recorded for training purposes. It doesn't actually mean that they're recording every phone call.
Yeah, but it's fun. I was just wondering, is that ethical?
Yeah, perfectly acceptable to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And it is a recognised way of ticking all the boxes.
So that's why it's a bit of dodgy ground. It's like we might do, we might not.
Yeah, that's essentially, you can do that.
Oh,
The fact that you're making people aware is the ethics behind the research. Do you see what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Similarly, having someone else in your other methodology that you were talking about, having someone else taking notes and mediating takes Venetia's subjective interpretations of what people's responses are away from Venetia.
But is that to somebody else's?
Potentially, yeah. But if she's got her, say she's got her, some of her sporadic recordings,
Yeah.
and she's got the data that someone else has moderated and taken down for her, she can be truly objective by looking at what's been recorded
Yeah.
and the data.
Oh, right, yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because she's not been involved in the process,
Yeah.
so she can start to not interpret it, but actually compile it, because you don't need to interpret it. Someone else has done that.
Yeah.
I suppose there's no 100% perfect way to do it, is there?
No, there isn't, but
Yeah.
but there are. But that would be
Yeah.
give a more objective collation of data.
Yeah.
Because Venetia's not been involved in the process.
Right.
What would be really good is if you could set your video camera up to randomly record certain snippets, because then you have no control
Yeah.
over what you might or might not get. The only problem with that is it may start to sample footage when there's nobody at your
Yeah.
exhibit, but you know. But I think it's very, very difficult, and I think a focus group's really good. And I think it's a valid way of collecting data, The only problem with focus groups is what known knowledge do those people have within the focus group. That's
one thing.
There is a selection process which then sullies your research, because you are then identifying certain protagonists that you want to be in the focus group for whatever reason.
I mean, that's one thing I was thinking of. I wasn't sure if it could maybe involve a pair of people who were visitors at the exhibition, and maybe a pair of people who were creators of pieces at the exhibition, and maybe just two people who don't know what's going on.
Yes, of course. No, that's again a very good model. You'll see that on programs like Question Time, where you've got two people that are not political. They're sort of essentially apolitical. Then you have a politician from the left and a politician from the right. Then you might have then you have your mediator, whoever that is, and then you might have two other people that were involved in politics but are no longer involved in politics, or professors in those fields.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that gives a more mediated, balanced collection of responses. And of course you have an audience, don't you?
Yes.
A studio audience of people that
that's
all
true.
have their own pluralistic outlook of what they feel individually. So that the focus group idea, I think, is a strong idea. The only problem with it is that in order to get closer to a representation of robust data, is that you essentially have to have a widespread, and you can't be responsible.
Yeah. I was
for
didn't specify that in order to reduce the amount of groupthink that might take place, the moderator, if they felt that everyone was making collective decisions, they might kind of encourage people to say, are you sure that's what everyone thinks? Does anyone have another opinion? Maybe encourage the people.
And the thing is what else that other things that may happen is people start to build up stronger relationships with people within that group, and obviously conversely you're going to have weaker relationships, and what tends to happen is those relationships become dominant, and people get caroused into the same, and that is another danger.
I was going to say, what if you get a dominant member of the group?
Yes, indeed, I mean, Meredith Belbin has done lots of work on group dynamics about how people sort of rise to leadership just naturally, because it's and some people don't want it, so they purposely take a back seat and become, I think Belbin calls it the plants. They just become an automaton, sort of. Yeah, tell me what I need to do. Yeah, I've done that. What do I need to do next?
Yeah.
Or they're sheep. They sort of just go along with the dominant thinking.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that people would like to contribute? Luke? No? Ben? Okay. All right. Well done, Venetia. That was bang on time.
Nice.
I'll just stop that.